So we have an update from the senile in chief himself, Biden, in that he has been avoiding cognitive tests.
Oh.
Well, there's supposedly been some new developments anyway. We don't know whether he's going to avoid it in perpetuity, but so far it seems like he has. So
Are we sure he's avoiding them or just forgetting them?
it is possible. He is, after all, 79 years old.
Goodness me.
Just for a bit of perspective, William Henry Harrison died on his 32nd day in office at a mere 68 years young, whole 11 years younger than Biden. So, despite what the left-wing media has said, describing him as a mostly cognizant president,
Damning with faint praise.
but there have, of course, been growing concerns about his cognitive abilities, and we can certainly see this if we take a look at some of his public speaking in his earlier political career, because, of course, he himself said that he's been in the Senate for 120 years. So here we are with Joe Biden on a speech on apartheid in 1986.
What disturbs me more than the policy that you call a policy is the rationale for the policy. The rationale for the policy. You set out 4 principles that you adhere to, and then and I will go over them in a moment. Then you say on page 14, we must not become part of South Africa's problem. We must remain part of their solution. We must not aim to impose ourselves, our solutions, our favorites in South Africa. Damn it, we have favorites in South Africa. The favorites in South Africa are the people who are being repressed by that ugly white regime. We have favorites. Our loyalty is not to South Africa, it's to South Africans. And the South Africans are majority black, and they are being excoriated. It is not to some stupid puppet government over there. It is not to the Afrikaner regime. We have no loyalty to them. We have no loyalty to South Africa, to South Africans.
As you can see, he's not exactly his modern day self, is he?
But I just love the way that he says that, having probably never set foot in South Africa as well.
I know. Obviously, what's on display here is the
politics,
content.
of course, but I have to mention that just the sheer sort of self-righteous and his self-righteousness and his, oh yes, I understand the local conditions of somewhere in another continent far, far across the world. It's like fabulous, Joe. Great.
But what's under the eyeglass here is his speech patterns, and as we can see, he was relatively
lucid.
Yeah, he was. You could even, dare I say, articulate. But nevertheless, I want to take one of my favourite of Biden's more recent clips, and this is him discussing working as a lifeguard in his youth at the opening of a swimming pool. This was in 2017, so this was some time ago, but nevertheless, things have certainly changed for Joe Biden.
Oh.
And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand, and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
What the hell?
I think I probably cut that at a little bit of an unfavourable time, but
oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, the leader of the free world.
I couldn't really follow what he was talking about. Obviously, that clip from him talking about apartheid South Africa, you can kind of gather what he's trying to say there, but that isolated clip, obviously, there is a context to it. The full clip is online for all to see. However, you can't really infer what he's trying to say there, and I don't think even with context it really makes
it sounded
a lot
like
of sense.
He was saying he enjoyed physical contact with minors when he was working at the swimming pool.
Well, another thing that's not under assessment today is Biden's pastimes.
There's so much that's pertinent about Biden that we're not talking about today, isn't that?
I know, it's simply his cognitive abilities. Because if
stay on track.
We're talking about all of his indiscretions, I'm sure we'd be here all day. But yes, this is symptomatic of many other gaffes that he's kind of created himself. For example, confusing Libya and Syria is another one. the now infamous quote: "Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids." And let's just not forget his entire withdrawal from Afghanistan, which, to be fair, I am joking around. I mean, it could be argued relatively well, I think, that the president's actions got people killed.
Absolutely. He's the biggest blunderer there, even surpassing Elphinstone in the 1800s.
Yeah, and this is a more serious and practical example of how having someone who has their cognitive capacity intact is important, because any middling military man will tell you that when you're making a retreat or evacuating a place, you leave the military there to ensure that it remains safe.
If you can, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he evacuated the military first before everyone else, which was panned by pretty much everyone as being stupid. So there was a poll, this is all the way back in November, from Politico. Voters doubt rising about Biden's health and mental fitness. So supposedly only 40% of voters surveyed agreed with the statement that Biden is in good health, while 50% disagreed that, and that is a 10 percentage point gap outside the margin's poll of error. The poll's margin of error, even. I'm getting Bidenisms by proxy here. And represents a massive 29-point shift since October 2020, when the Morning Consult last surveyed the question and found voters believe Biden was in good health by a 19-point margin. Asked whether Biden was mentally fit, voters are almost evenly split, with 46% saying he is and 48% disagreeing, but that is a negative 2-point margin, stands in stark contrast with Biden's numbers last October, when voters believed he was mentally fit by a 21-point margin. So clearly, voters' faith in Biden's cognitive abilities is declining fast, perhaps even faster than his own cognitive abilities. And I feel like, although this isn't necessarily related to his cognitive abilities, I feel like I need to give this an honourable mention just because it's something absurd that never fails to make me laugh. So, Joe Biden farted close to Camilla and she can't stop talking about it. So, if you're from the United States, Camilla is the future queen of the United Kingdom.
God, no.
And Joe Biden apparently can't control his bowels around actual royalty.
She's the wife of Prince Charles, who is the heir to the throne.
Yes. So I'm going to read a little bit from this Metro article, notorious left-wing outlet as well. Even they can't resist.
It's a free paper in London, so someone's got to be paying for it.
Joe Biden's COP26 trip had already been somewhat marred by being flashed by a large Scottish man and appearing to fall asleep during the speeches, but US President has now been hit with further embarrassing revelations concerning his brief visit to Glasgow. Apparently, the most powerful man in the world produced some of his own emissions at the summit.
Give that journalist a raise.
By farting audibly whilst chatting with the Duchess of Cornwall. Camilla is said to have been so taken aback by the incident that she won't stop talking about it, the Mail on Sunday reported, citing an informed source. The source said, "It was long, loud, and impossible to ignore." Camilla hasn't stopped talking about it. And I don't mean to be puerile and immature, but
I do.
Come on, your president shouldn't be doing this.
Can't control his own bowel movements, let alone the United States military.
Oh dear. So many Republican congressmen have written a letter to Joe Biden, expressing concerns for his cognitive abilities and imploring him to take a cognitive test, as Trump was more or less made to do, and which he did do and passed with flying colours, supposedly. And this letter, by the way, is gold. And I'm going to read it in its entirety because it is so good. So, we write again to you to express concern with your current cognitive state. We believe that, regardless of gender, age, or political party, all presidents should follow the example set by former President Trump to document and demonstrate sound mental abilities. While you underwent your annual physical exam on November 19th, 2021, you either did not have a cognitive test, or those results were withheld from the public. White House physician Kevin O'Connor, D.O., attested to you being fit to successfully execute the duties of the presidency in a purely physical manner. However, we are worried about your cognitive and mental abilities. I mean, fair enough, given his track record. As you may remember, several members of Congress sent you a letter on this issue in June of last year, to which you have not replied. Since then, the American people have continuously lost faith in your ability to effectively and competently handle your duties as President of the United States. This is reflected by recent polling, and they list the polling that I mentioned earlier. The Alzheimer's Association lists changes in mood and personality, including being more easily upset, as one of the 10 signs of mental decline. You displayed this type of mood change during your cabinet meeting on January 24th, 2022, when you apparently did not know your microphone was on after finishing your opening remarks, and you called a White House reporter a stupid son of a bee or female dog in response to a question asked on inflation. Further, in December 16th, 2021, press conference with White House COVID-19 response team, you appeared to be unable to read the numbers in front of you. When attempting to announce the total number of the population who had received a booster shot, you said 57, 570. I don't want to read it. I'm not sure I got the right number, before being corrected by Dr. Anthony Fauci with the right statistic of 57 million. So it looks like the president can't actually read 57 million, which, when dealing with the US deficit and debts, I feel like that's slightly worrying.
Yeah, you need to understand large numbers.
So this is not just a recent trend, as your mental decline and forgetfulness has become more apparent over the last 2 years. On the campaign trail, you often forgot the names of states that you were in for campaign rallies. The Alzheimer's Association points out confusion with time or place, another of the 10 signs and symptoms of mental decline. In February 2021, you publicly forgot the purpose of your visit to survey the winter storm damage in Texas. In March 2021, you forgot the name of the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, and the Defense Secretary.
Oh my God.
Lastly, in May 2021, you told a story from your tenure as Vice President in which you stated you regularly visited your sick mother via Amtrak in 2013, even though she passed away in 2010.
That's mad.
Yeah, so although we're joking about this is actually quite concerning. The American people should have absolute confidence in their president. They deserve to know that he or she can perform the duties of the head of state and the commander-in-chief. They deserve full transparency on the mental capabilities of their highest elected leader. To achieve this, we urge you to submit to a cognitive test immediately. We implore you to then publish the test results so the American people know the full mental and intellectual health of their president, and to follow the example set before you, which I think is actually a reasonable request. Yeah. I think, particularly with the age of elected officials in this day and age, yeah, well, that seems like a reasonable thing to do. With that amount of responsibility, I'm sure that people in other industries, for example, in the private sector, take cognitive tests if they're old.
Yeah, and let's think about this for a second. People in elite positions take all of these sort of personal enhancement, personal physical health, consultancy type advice and tests and so on. The people in top positions, you want to have the top expertise and assistance when it comes to them discharging their duties. A mere cognitive test.
It's not really a big ask, is it? It doesn't take very long.
Exactly. Either. So it seems like they're frightened of the results.
Well, I would argue that is the very reason I've formulated this together. It's clear to me that the reason he hasn't taken one or hasn't published the results is because they will be damning. But the letter continues. This is not an unprecedented request. Starting in 2018, political opponents and members of the media clamoured for your predecessor, then President Trump, to take a cognitive test. In response, the White House physician conducted a Montreal cognitive assessment for President Trump, at which he excelled. According to Dr. Ziad Nasruddin, the neurologist who created the test, the MOCA for short, is a simple screening tool to identify early signs of mental impairment. Dr. Nasruddin said the test is best administered when a person or their loved ones start noticing mental decline. This particularly includes forgetfulness on ordinary tasks, which you have clearly exhibited throughout your tenure. We believe that the MOCA should be a routine part of any physical examination for every president going forward, which, again, I would say is very reasonable. This is not a partisan issue, as Democrat Representative Jamie Raskin previously pointed out. With many politicians and the population at large growing older, it's hard to think that they'll...
Not hard to think.
Yeah, that's the one. Sorry. It's not hard to think that there will be a future situation where presidents' physical and mental states may create issues for us. At the time of this quote, Representative Raskin introduced legislation to establish an independent commission that would examine a president's fitness for office and determine whether the president is mentally or physically unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office. We agree with these statements. As such, we encourage you to follow this example set by President Trump by undergoing a cognitive test as soon as possible and immediately making the results available for the American people.
Eminently reasonable.
It is indeed, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes. And President Trump's former doctor, while he was in office, went on Fox News to talk about this letter. And he says, as a former physician to 3 presidents of the United States, I know what it takes mentally and physically to execute the duties of Commander-in-Chief and the head of state. Joe Biden has continually proved to me and to the world that something isn't right. The American people deserve to have the absolute confidence in their president's cognitive ability. Jackson said that Biden taking the cognitive test will be an important first step in identifying and properly treating symptoms of impairment that are consistent with a variety of cognitive diseases such as Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, Parkinson's, or multiple sclerosis. This is not a partisan issue. When I discussed taking a cognitive test with President Trump, he was eager to assure the American people and to put the fake news media stories to bed. Why won't President Biden do the same? We can only assume the worst if he doesn't submit to the same standard that his own party demanded of the last administration. The president has been set.
So that sounds very reasonable. All we need now is a Cylon test and an ethics test, and we'll have him sorted.
So I look forward to the time where Biden either dismisses this out of hand, ignores the letter entirely, or actually takes the test. I imagine that last one is probably not going to happen because I very much think that he's not going to do very well on that test.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go and support us at lotuseaters.com. We don't do any adverts, so that's how we're funded, and you get access to all of our premium content, such as this series of articles by John Wheatley about reading the future in propaganda. I won't spoil it, but like I said, if you like to support us, you can get parts 1, 2, and 3 is now out. If you did find this interesting, you can always congratulate John Wheatley on his excellent analysis on getter.com. Follow him just at John Wheatley. Thanks very much.